Rabies is a deadly virus spread to people from the saliva of infected animals. The rabies virus is usually transmitted through a bite. The Florida Department of Health in Polk County issued a rabies alert for 2 communities within Polk County. Where they are and what you can do to prevent the spread of rabies is coming up on Polk Place. Hello, I'm Trisha Pichette, and with me today is Dr. Liza Kublau-Singh from the Florida Department of Health in Polk County. And you're an epidemiologist.
Yes, ma'am.
So your specialty is?
We work with communicable diseases.
Okay. And I would imagine that covers quite a large area.
Yes, so we deal with all of the reportable diseases on the Florida reportable diseases list. For our office, with the exceptions of TB and HIV, those are separate offices within the Department of Health, but epidemiology deals with the other spectrum of reportable diseases.
Now, we have had a couple of reports of rabies in Polk County this year. Is there a season where rabies tends to happen, or is this a year-long problem?
Well, for this year, we've had 6 cases of rabies identified in the wild animal population. We identified 2 in the month of January, 2 in the month of February, and 2 in the month of November. But for the past 10 years, the month that we've identified as having the most cases is the month of May.
Oh.
So in the past 10 years, there have been 18 cases in May, and then March is the month with the 2nd most frequent cases, and then after that, there's a tie amongst January and November.
Now, typically, what are the kinds of animals that you find the incidence of rabies in the most?
Well, the rabies virus is endemic in the wild animal population, and there's certain animals that we consider higher risk of having the virus. So animals such as bats, raccoons, bobcats, coyotes, skunks, otters. Those are some higher risk animals for the virus.
So if you're out and about in your neighborhood, or you're out and about in one of the parks or the more rural areas of the county, and you come across something like a raccoon, you're saying do you err on the side of caution?
Definitely err on the side of caution, and that's one of the main messages that we want to get out to everyone in the community, is to stay away from wild animals because they carry the rabies virus. So you do not want to unnecessarily attract them, do not feed them, do not bring them into your home, do not adopt them. And if you or your pet are bitten, seek care immediately. So for humans, seek medical attention, and if an animal is bitten, you want to contact your veterinarian as well right away. And that's another thing that we want to stress, is to keep your animals vaccinated as well, because that can help protect them.
Okay. Now, when you said seek care, we're not talking about making an appointment with your doctor a week from now.
No, it's definitely, right away, as soon as possible. If you're able to go to the hospital, do that, because you will need wound care, you will need a tetanus shot, you will need some antibiotics, and then the assessment of whether or not post-exposure prophylaxis for the rabies virus. If it's a high-risk animal, that's something that we want to get started soon. Now, the Department of Health can make those assessments, but you do want to go and get medical care and report the incident to our local animal control office here and to our office.
Now, some people think that they have to have the animal that bit them in order to go to the hospital so that that animal can be tested. That's not correct, is it?
No, that's not correct. I mean, if we do have the animal in possession, the animal can be euthanized and its brain tested for the rabies virus. And within that window, we can delay post-exposure prophylaxis because the results of those tests are usually available the next business day. So in certain instances we can, but if the animal's escaped and just not to be found, post-exposure prophylaxis is going to be recommended, and you're going to need to start it as soon as possible.
Now, there are some pet owners who do not vaccinate their pets, and we kind of want to stress to them that it's not only dangerous from the pet. If your pet cat gets in an entanglement with an otter, let's say, and comes home, that cat can then pass the rabies on to you.
Yes, that is exactly correct. So you do want to make sure your animals are up to date on their vaccines. If an exposure occurs and an animal has received its vaccines less than a month ago, that's not considered up to date.
Oh.
If the vaccine was administered by someone other than a licensed veterinarian, that's not considered being up to date on your vaccines.
Okay.
If the animal was vaccinated but never received a booster a year later, that's not considered a vaccinated animal. So you would want to take those measures to make sure your animal is vaccinated, so that in the event that there's an exposure, or in the event that they're exposed to a wild animal, they are protected, and in turn you're protecting your family so that you're not exposed to the virus that way from the animal.
If you do have any interaction with a wild animal, or, well, actually, let's go back. Let's say that it's a domestic animal like a dog or a cat. You know, you look back in the movies, they show animals who are foaming at the mouth and acting bizarrely. You're not waiting for that if you're bitten by a dog you don't know, or a cat you don't know.
No, you do not wait for anything like that. An animal can actually shed the rabies virus for 4 days prior to showing any clinical signs and symptoms. And for an animal, there are different stages that they go through when having rabies. And so one of the later stages, they can have what's called dumb rabies, and they can actually be very affectionate and very docile. So you may think, ooh, this is such a cute animal and they're so affectionate, but it can actually be a manifestation of the rabies virus.
We've had 2 rabies incidents here in Polk County. Where are those areas?
Well, we issued a rabies alert on November 18th, and that is, the period of the alert is for 60 days from that date, and that's in response to the 2 rabid animals that we identified. They're 2 rabid raccoons, and the alerts are for the Bartow area and the Loughman area. And the boundaries of the Bartow area extends from Georgia Street to the north, Man Street to the south, US Highway 17 to the east, and Mary Holland Park Road to the west. And for Loughman, the boundaries are Kinney, Harmon Road to the north, US Highway 17 to the west, and Providence Golf Club to the south. So those are the boundaries, but please keep in mind that the rabies virus can be found outside those boundaries as well, but the alert is for those 2 areas specifically.
Now, is there any other information that you can give us that might be helpful to our viewers?
Yes, certainly. So We want to stress the importance of keeping your animals up to date on their vaccine. And we mentioned what constitutes having an up-to-date animal. Vaccines administered more than a month, given by a licensed vet. If the vaccines have been given a year ago, the animal should have had a booster a year after, and that's considered up to date. So an animal with non-up-to-date vaccines, that's not considered. We don't consider that a vaccinated animal. Okay, so keep your animals vaccinated, keep them within your property, and don't allow them to run outside, roam free, where they can be exposed to a rabid animal. Mm-hmm. We want to teach children not to go near or pet any unfamiliar animals, whether wild or domestic. All right, and we want to remind people to keep their animals spayed and neutered to reduce reduce the number of uncared for animals and the likelihood of animals not being vaccinated. Okay, and we want to keep in mind that there are other types of exposure. So bats, I'm sure if we mentioned that bats are also a very high-risk animal. So if a bat is found in a room with an unattended child, or someone who's been sleeping, or someone who's intoxicated or incapacitated in some way, we consider that to be an exposure, because bat bites are such that they may not be felt. So that's something that we consider a high-risk exposure. So we want to keep bats out of places like schools, houses, churches, places where there are a lot of people or animals. And we spoke about not attracting wildlife unnecessarily, not feeding them, not bringing them into your home. And if you are bitten or exposed to an animal, please seek medical care right away and inform your local animal control and the Department of Health.
Well, thank you very much. That's very valuable information to have. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
The Florida Department of Health in Polk County issued a rabies alert for the Bartow and Loughman areas in response to raccoons that have tested positive for rabies. All residents and visitors in Polk County should be aware rabies is present in the wild animal population, and domestic animals are also at risk if not vaccinated. The public is asked to maintain a heightened awareness that rabies is active in Polk County. For more information, you can give the Department of Health a call at 863-519-7900 or look them up on the web at www.polk.floridahealth.gov.